Hi, how you going? So this week I'm going to be making something. I decided I needed a dice tray for D&D, and I'd bought this old book from an op shop. I think it looks older than it actually is. It was published in 1982. It's called In Search of Excellence, and it's by George Edgar, and I think it's about management and stuff like that. But no one's going to read this again, and while it's sacrilegious to destroy books, I thought I'm giving it a new lease on life, and it'd make a fun project. So what I'm planning on doing is cutting all the pages out, so like the people who hide a flask of whiskey in a book or something like that, and then using that as a dice tray. And I thought I'd line it. I've got some felt squares here. I'll line it with those and just make it a nice thing that I can use to transport my dice, or that I can use to roll the dice during the game. So let's get into it. So first things first, I'm just marking out the area that I want to cut out of the book. And then from there, start cutting. You might have to score the same line a few times before you cut through. And I'll be saving this sort of cover page, the blue part, for later, because that piece of card matches the card that's already in there. So if I need to repair anything or use that for another method, then I'll do that. Now I'm using an outside cardboard layer as a guide to cut the pages out, and yeah, these will require a few cuts, and this is just an exercise in patience. There's several hundred pages in this book, so in order to get through every single one of them, you need to just keep cutting, and the more you cut, the more likely you are to sort of start tearing edges or that kind of stuff. So it's better to sort of do a few at a time. I started getting a little impatient towards the end and ended up trying to do too much and ended up tearing some of the pages for the book, which required a few sort of little fixes as we went along. But yeah, it's just a matter of keeping on cutting and keeping on cutting. And don't worry if there's sort of raw edges and they aren't perfectly matched, because I feel like that is part of the appeal of this thing. It's not perfect. So I really like that look of the sort of slightly ragged edges. So now we come to the gluing, and this is just a cheap PVA that I got from the discount shop. That's all you need for this, something that'll soak into those pages. Use a bit of it. And I'm using a page that I cut out of the book as a brush to just spread that on there. In the end, I ended up ditching the page and just spread it with my fingers and got it everywhere. So it's put a bunch on, spread it all in, soak it into the pages, and then put some more on. You get it between the pages, and between that cover page, you want to end up with a hard edge, something that's going to feel solid and that it's not going to sort of come apart. So gluing both on the inside and the outside of the pages. And I'm kind of leaving the lid propped up like this, so that, because when the lid goes down, it kind of stretches the book across, but when I leave the lid propped up, it holds it nice and flat. And now we leave that to dry. So now I've got a nice piece of felt to use as the base, so just measuring that out by jamming it in there and cutting it. The scissors worked better than the knife. The knife left a slightly ragged edge, and then you might need to sort of do some little cuts around the edge because the book isn't going to be fully uniform. So now some more PVA glue, put that in there and make sure that every section is pushed down really well and is glued in there, because you don't want sort of bubbles or ridges that are going to mess with the dice roll. So I was also going to line the inside of where the pages are with that cream coloured felt, but I really like the look of the pages as they finished up. I went through my random bits and pieces to find something to use to keep this shut. So I ended up going with a magnet, which required me to chop out part of the book to put that in. and then sealing that in. At first I used super glue, and then I used some other fairly hardcore glue to keep that in there, just because you don't want the magnet pulling out. It's a fairly strong one. And then I cut out a bit of extra so I can lay another bit of that extra blue cardboard over the top to sort of cover it. And then I covered the top of that in PVA just so it matched the look of the rest of it as well. And also glued some little bits from the pages on the outside to try and hide that magnet. So this is just a piece of metal I found in one of my drawers, so I'm chopping that off so I've got a nice flat bit to use as the magnet mount. And then this will need to be inset into the book as well, so it's not rising up too high. That was quite satisfying to peel out of there. And then using, again, some of that nice strong glue to keep that in there, and then using a clamp just to make sure that's glued in as tightly as it can be. And then once that glue is set, I glued another piece of that cardboard over the top just to sort of hide that magnetic catch. So that is my completed book dice tray. I'm quite happy with how it turned out, and it works really well, so I'll definitely give that some use. I've got a D&D weekend coming up, so I'll give it a crack then. I would do some things differently if I made it again. I'd probably get the magnet in before I glued the whole thing together so that I didn't have to pull parts out and replace them. The magnet works pretty well. I would probably try to make that a little bit stronger for next time, but it does actually work to keep it closed, so it does do the job. I really like how this turned out, so I'm quite happy with that as a project. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know if you've got any questions or anything in the comments, and I'll see you next week. Bye.